Most people don't go broke because they're poor. They go broke because they're desperate to prove they're not. Think about that for a moment. Somewhere out there right now, someone is making minimum payments on a credit card for a vacation they took 6 months ago. Someone is losing sleep over a car payment that's stretching their budget to the breaking point. Someone is sitting in a restaurant, ordering the most expensive item on the menu, hoping no one at the table notices they're going to overdraft tomorrow. And the heartbreaking part? They didn't get there by accident. They got there by choice, a choice disguised as ambition, as self-expression, as simply treating themselves. But underneath it all, if we're honest, the real driver wasn't need. It was image. The Bible warned us about this over 3,000 years ago. Proverbs 22:7 says, "The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender." That's not a metaphor. That's not religious poetry. That is one of the most precise financial principles ever written. When you borrow money to buy things you don't need, to impress people who don't truly care about you, you are not purchasing respect. You are selling your future. In this video, we're going to unpack exactly why the wise never borrow money to impress others. We're going to look at the modern trap that's catching millions of people. We're going to go deep into what Solomon understood about debt that most financial gurus never talk about. And we're going to walk through 6 timeless lessons drawn from biblical wisdom that will fundamentally change the way you think about money, image, and freedom. I want to give this principle a name so you'll never forget it. The empty crown rule. A crown can shine brilliantly on the outside, but if the inside is filled with debt, anxiety, and performance that's not glory, that is a gilded chain. And today, we're going to learn why the wise refuse to wear it. The modern trap. Buying an image with borrowed money. Here's the uncomfortable truth about our generation. Most people aren't buying things anymore. They're buying the story they want other people to believe about them. There was a time when a person's worth was measured by their integrity, their word, their faithfulness to their family, and the wisdom with which they managed what they'd been given. But somewhere along the way, a cultural shift happened. And now, for many people, the primary measure of success isn't character, it's appearance. The car has to be nicer than you can actually afford. The phone has to be newer than you actually need. The wedding has to be bigger than your bank account can support. The vacation has to look more luxurious than your savings balance would suggest. The house has to make the neighbors say, "Wow," even if the owner is quietly drowning in a mortgage that consumes every extra dollar they have. I'm not making this up. Consider a young professional who lands their first real job. Within weeks, they're at a dealership not because they need a new car to generate income, but because they want their college friends to see they've made it. Consider a family that puts an entire celebration on a credit card, not because they have the money, but because they can't stand the thought of relatives whispering that they're doing worse than everyone else. Consider the person who buys designer goods on an installment plan, posts the photo for the approval of strangers online, and then quietly cuts back on groceries for the next 3 months to cover it. This is the modern epidemic. And it's not a money problem at its core. It's an identity problem. When you need to borrow money for others to think you're okay, you've handed the keys to your financial life over to public opinion. And public opinion is a landlord who will never stop raising the rent. Before you make any major purchase, especially one that involves borrowing, ask yourself 3 honest questions. First, does this serve a real purpose in my life? Second, would I still want this if absolutely no one would ever know I owned it? And third, does this move me toward freedom, or does it bind me more tightly to obligation? If the honest answer to that second question is no, if the real reason you want it is so that someone, somewhere, will see you differently, then Solomon would call that a trap. The ancient warning, Solomon on the chains of debt. Let's go deeper into that verse from Proverbs 22:7, because most people read it too quickly. The borrower is slave to the lender. Solomon wasn't just talking about money. He was talking about power. He was talking about freedom. He was talking about who actually owns your future. When you go into debt, you don't just owe money. You owe time. You owe peace of mind. You owe future paychecks. You owe choices you haven't even had the chance to make yet. A person who owes nothing can make decisions based on wisdom. A person buried in debt is forced to make decisions based on pressure. They can't afford to take a risk on a better career because the payments won't stop. They can't help their family in a moment of crisis because they already spent tomorrow's money on yesterday's image. They can't invest in anything that builds actual wealth because every extra dollar is already spoken for. Now, I want to make an important distinction here, because not all debt is created equal. A loan taken to develop a genuine income-producing skill or asset can, with wisdom, be evaluated and considered carefully. A vehicle used to generate business income can be a tool. Education that builds earning power and is calculated wisely can be an investment. But debt taken on for the sole purpose of impressing other people? That produces no asset. It creates no cash flow. It builds no skill. It generates no lasting value. It only creates appearance, and appearance, as Solomon knew, has no equity. Here's what makes impression-driven debt particularly dangerous. It doesn't show up looking threatening. It shows up whispering, "You deserve this. Just this once. Everyone else is doing it. The monthly payment isn't that much. You have to show people who you are." And like drops of water wearing down stone, those small whispers, those small decisions, accumulate over time into something that can take years to escape. Here's a practical exercise. Write down every debt you currently carry and divide them into two categories. Category 1. Debt that serves real value income. Skills, necessary assets. Category 2. Debt that serves an image. Then make it a priority to eliminate Category 2 first. Because Category 2 is not building your future. It's charging interest on your ego. The empty crown rule. Now I want to formally name and define the central principle of everything we're talking about today. The empty crown rule. The wise do not wear a crown purchased with chains. An empty crown is anything that makes you appear successful on the outside, while making you weaker on the inside. It can be a car, a house, a watch, a vacation, a wedding, a lifestyle, a personal brand you're performing on social media. If it earns you admiration from others, but costs you sleep at night, that is not a blessing. That is a burden wrapped in gold foil. Now, I want to be careful here, because the Bible is not anti-prosperity. Solomon was extraordinarily wealthy. Joseph managed the economic resources of an entire nation. The woman described in Proverbs 31 was a businesswoman. She bought land. She engaged in trade. She built and provided for her household with wisdom and strength. Biblical prosperity is real, and it is good. But the critical difference is this. Prosperity in Scripture always travels alongside wisdom, discipline, and stewardship. Stewardship means you are not the ultimate owner of what you have. You are the manager. You are holding something in trust. And the question a steward asks is never simply, "Can I afford this?" The deeper question is this wise management of what I've been entrusted with? That changes everything. A well-fitting suit worn to a job interview is preparation. The same suit bought on a credit card just to be noticed at a party is an empty crown. Upgrading your phone because your work genuinely requires it is a tool. Upgrading it because you're afraid people will think you're behind the times, that is your image ruling over you. Every empty crown carries a hidden invoice. The first bill is financial. The second bill is psychological pressure. The third bill is the exhausting trap of comparison. Because once you start living for the approval of others, you can never stop, because there will always be someone with a shinier crown. And the final bill is the most costly of all. the slow erosion of knowing who you actually are. 6 lessons the wise never forget. Lesson 1. Don't let other people's eyes govern your wallet. When you spend money to earn recognition, you stop being the manager of your finances. You become a servant to other people's opinions. A wise person doesn't ask, "What will they think?" They ask, "Is this consistent with my purpose and my responsibilities?" Here's a scenario many of us know. Everyone in your circle is upgrading their car. Your current car runs perfectly fine, but you start feeling the pull. The quiet anxiety that not upgrading means you're falling behind. That decision, if you make it, doesn't come from need. It comes from comparison. And comparison is one of the most financially destructive forces in a person's life, because it makes you run someone else's race with your own money. Write this down as a personal rule. I will not borrow money simply to change the way others see me. Put it somewhere you'll see it when you're tempted. Lesson 2. What you own through debt may actually own you. You think you own the car. But if that car payment controls your schedule, elevates your stress, and restricts your choices, the car owns you. You think you own the house. But if the mortgage has stripped away every margin of peace and flexibility in your life, you are not the homeowner, the lender is. There's a person we all know who looks successful from the outside, decent income, new gadgets, frequent travel posts online, but almost every dollar of their income flows directly into payments. Car loan, phone installment, credit cards, personal loan. They have no financial breathing room, no emergency fund, no real choices. They are fully employed in service of their past decisions. Real wealth gives you options. Bad debt takes options away. Measure your financial health not only by what you possess, but by how much freedom you still have. Ask yourself this. If my income disappeared for 3 months, would what I'm buying today protect me or betray me? Lesson 3. The wise build their reputation through character, not consumption. Proverbs teaches that a good name is more valuable than great wealth. But our culture has confused reputation with image. A real reputation is built through faithfulness, keeping your word, honoring your commitments, managing your responsibilities well, showing up consistently for the people who depend on you. Image can be purchased. Reputation must be earned over time. Consider 2 people. The first lives modestly, pays their obligations on time, helps their family when possible, keeps their promises, and works with integrity. They may not make a strong first impression, but after 5 years, they are trusted, truly trusted by everyone around them. The second person presents lavishly, spends publicly, posts the highlights constantly, but routinely borrows, delays payments, and overpromises. They have a compelling image, but they have no real credibility. When image grows faster than character, collapse is only a matter of time. Stop asking, "What do I need to buy to be respected?" Start asking, "What kind of person do I need to become to be trusted?" Lesson 4. Borrowing to impress is a symptom of unhealed insecurity. Not every financial problem begins with money. Many financial problems begin with a wound. Some people spend to prove something to the person who once dismissed them. Some borrow because they cannot tolerate feeling like they're behind their peers. Some shop to fill a silence inside them that they don't know how to sit with. Some perform wealth because they are terrified of being seen as a failure. But no loan amount can heal a wounded identity. If you use money to repair your self-worth, you will always need more. Because the problem isn't in your wallet, it's in your soul. Before you borrow or buy something designed to impress, pause and ask honestly, am I buying this because I need it, or because I'm trying to prove something? Am I managing money right now, or am I reacting to an old pain? Can I allow my value to be defined by something more permanent than what a crowd of people thinks of me? Lesson 5. The wise delay the display to build real strength. One of the most consistent marks of a wise person is their willingness to be underestimated for a season. They don't need to prove themselves too early. They don't need to look wealthy before they actually have a foundation. They don't need every step of their progress witnessed and applauded. Solomon understood that wisdom is usually quiet before it is publicly visible. While others are borrowing to upgrade their lifestyle, the wise person is quietly paying off debt, building an emergency fund, developing skills, growing investments, and strengthening their financial foundation. After a few years, the person who performed wealth has a long list of obligations. The person who practiced discipline has a long list of options. Most people trade real future wealth for the feeling of present wealth. Don't make that trade. Let your assets grow faster than your lifestyle. When your income increases, resist the pressure to immediately upgrade everything around you. First, strengthen the foundation, your reserves, your skills, your freedom from bad debt. The display will come naturally when the strength underneath it is real. Lesson 6. Stewardship begins the moment you stop living for applause. Stewardship is not simply saving money. Stewardship is living with the conscious awareness that every dollar you hold has a purpose, and that purpose matters. Money can protect your family. It can create opportunities. It can serve people around you who need help. It can build something that outlasts you. But when money is consistently directed toward feeding pride and performing success, it loses its highest purpose. Think about what $500 could do in the hands of a wise steward. It could eliminate a piece of high-interest debt. It could fund a course that builds a meaningful skill. It could become the first contribution to an emergency fund that one day protects an entire family from crisis. It could be given to someone who genuinely needs it. Or that same $500 could be spent in a single evening, purchasing a few hours of admiration from people who will forget about it within days. Money without direction follows emotion. Money without discipline follows the crowd. Money without stewardship serves the ego. Before each month begins, give every dollar a job. How much will cover your needs? How much goes toward eliminating debt? How much goes into savings? How much is invested? How much is given? How much is invested in your growth? The wise person doesn't look at the end of a month, wondering where everything went. They deploy their resources before their feelings have the chance to spend them. The conclusion: don't buy admiration with your future. Let me bring this full circle. The wise never borrow money to impress others, not because they don't enjoy nice things, not because they've taken a vow of poverty, but because they understand something deeply. The admiration of other people is far too cheap a price to pay for financial freedom. One moment of applause is not worth one sleepless night. One glamorous photo is not worth the security of a family that isn't living under financial stress. One head-turning purchase is not worth a mind that is free from the weight of debt. One impressive appearance is not worth a life built on actual wisdom. This is the empty crown rule. Don't wear what makes others admire you, but slowly empties your soul. Don't buy respect with money you don't have. Don't let debt become the price tag on a false identity. Solomon would not ask you, "Do you look wealthy?" He would ask, "Are you wisely managing what has been entrusted to you?" Money is not just a consumption tool. It is a test of wisdom, of discipline, of humility, of faithfulness. The faithful steward doesn't spend for attention. They manage for peace. They build for protection. They live simply when the season calls for it. They wait for the right moment. And they are not afraid of being underestimated, because they know that God sees what the crowd cannot. One person may appear poor in the eyes of the world while quietly laying the foundation for lasting wealth. Another may appear rich to the crowd while steadily becoming a slave to their creditors. So, don't borrow money to impress anyone. Use money to serve your purpose. Don't build an empty crown. Build a life with a foundation that holds. Subscribe to Keep Learning. If this lesson made you look honestly at the way you've been spending, borrowing, or trying to prove yourself to others, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below that says, "I choose freedom over image." And if this kind of teaching resonates with you, subscribe to the Biblical Wealth Code. This channel exists to bring ancient biblical wisdom into the way we think about money, stewardship, and building wealth that actually lasts. We don't chase get-rich-quick strategies here. We learn to manage money with wisdom that has stood for thousands of years, with the discipline, the principles, and the spirit of stewardship that build lives of genuine peace and purpose. I'll see you in the next lesson.